This week in our sermon, we talked about being grateful in all situations, and it made me think that the foundation of gratefulness may actually be learning to be content. And that, of course, made me think about a very familiar passage that we're going to take a look at today. Hey everyone, and welcome to Beyond the Sermon, our weekly series where we take a look back at our Sunday sermon and dive into it a little bit further so we can learn, grow, and go deeper with Jesus. My name is Derek. I'm one of the ministers here at Southport Heights, and like I said, this week was about being grateful. In fact, our sermon title was Grateful in the Grind. Gratefulness in all things, especially in the hard things. And Pastor Steve gave us lots of examples about gratefulness and even about learning not to be distracted by the things around us. And I thought about gratefulness and how so many times learning to be grateful is learning to be content. Content in all things. I can be grateful for this, I can be grateful for that because I've learned to be content. And of course, that drove me to a very familiar passage, which we're going to talk about today. So, I'm going to go to Philippians chapter 4. Philippians chapter 4, we're going to start in verse 10 and read a few verses. I'm actually reading from the New Living Translation today. And so if you have a Bible, you can definitely look it up. Philippians chapter 4, we're going to read verses 10 through 14. And again, there's a very familiar passage in this section. So let's take a look, starting at verse 10. How I praise the Lord that you are concerned about me again. I know you have always been concerned for me, but you didn't have the chance to help me. Not that I was ever in need, for I have learned how to be content in whatever I have. I know how to live on almost nothing or with everything. I have learned the secret of living in every situation, whether it is with a full stomach or empty, with plenty or with little. For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength. Even so, you have done well to share with me in my present difficulty. So the first thing I have to say here is that context is crucial. I think one of the most important things I will ever say is that context is crucial. So what is the context here? Well, this is a letter being written to the people of Philippi from Paul. He is writing to these people, and in this section of the letter, he is telling them that he appreciates their support. I think probably he's talking about some financial support, something they're giving to him, but he's also talking about their prayer, their concern for him. And he said, hey, I know you've always been concerned for me. You just didn't have the chance to give just yet. And so he's like, wow, I so appreciate you guys. It's so wonderful. And then he says, however, I'm not really in need at this point because I've learned stuff. And then he's going to talk about that. So that's the context we're talking about here. He's talking to a group of people based on his relationship with them and how much they care for him. All right. So Paul has learned something that he's going to tell us or tell them in this letter, which we can then glean as well. So first of all, he says, I've learned how to be content. I've learned how to be content. Then he says, I've learned the secret to living in every situation. So I've learned how to be content, and I've learned the secret to living in every situation. So here's the question. What is the secret? What has Paul learned on how to be content? What has Paul learned that is the secret to living his life? What is it? Well, he's going to tell us in this passage, and the answer is, I can do everything through Christ. Now, the reason I bring up that context is crucial is because so many people will quote this verse when they're about to do something good, bad, hard, easy, whatever, and they'll say, well, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. I can do all things through Christ who I can run this marathon because Christ gives me strength. I can climb this mountain because Christ has given me strength. I can whatever because Christ has given me strength. Now, is it untrue? Well, okay, it's not necessarily untrue. Can God give you the strength to move forward and do so? Sure. But the context is that Paul says the secret to living your life to its fullest, to whatever you're doing, whether you have a bunch of money, whether you have no money, whether you are full from eating, whether you are starving because you haven't eaten in a long time, whatever it is, you can do it. You can live your life. You can keep moving forward because of Christ's strength in you. That's the key. And then he even rounds up right after that and he says, even so, it's good that you're, going with me on this. He's almost like saying, hey, I wonder if Paul's saying, look, I don't really need it. I don't really need your gift. I don't need your money. I don't need your stuff. But it's so good that you're going with me on this. I am so glad for you. I don't have a need. I know God's going to take care of me. However, I'm so glad that you're with me on this. And so that's kind of, I think that's kind of what Paul is saying here. I don't think he would directly come out and say like, don't give me anything, because he wants them to be a blessing and them to be blessed because of that. But anyway, that's what he's talking about here. And so what does content mean in this passage? Because that's what we're talking about, learning to be content. And I think that breeds gratefulness. What does content mean? What does the Greek word behind the word content mean? Sufficient for oneself, okay, sufficient for oneself, then strong enough or possessing enough to need no aid or support. All right, I'll read that one more time. Strong enough or possessing enough to need no aid or support. That is what content means in this thing. I think we hear the word content in English and we think, oh, he's got everything he needs and so he's happy. And so, yes, that's true, but it goes a step further here in the Greek. It has sufficient for oneself, sufficient, strong enough, possessing enough to not need any aid or support. And so when Paul says, I've learned to be content, what he's suggesting, I think, to these people is, I don't need your aid or support. I am content. I have everything I need through Christ. Not through myself, not through my own hard work, but through Christ. Think about this for just a second. Paul is strong enough to live his life because of his dependency on Christ's sufficiency. All right? Paul is strong enough to live his life because of his dependency on Christ's sufficiency. That's the thing that he is pointing out here. He sandwiches this with talking about the people in Philippians, talking about how they have blessed him. He's so glad that they're going to give to him. And then even saying at the end, even so I'm glad you're with me. But in the middle, he's like, look, I don't need all this stuff because I am dependent on Christ. It is Christ who gives me the strength to live my life when I'm full, to live my life when I'm hungry, to live my life when I'm excited, to live my life when I'm depressed, to live my life when I'm up, to live my life when I'm down. It is Christ's strength who keeps me going. And we can have the same contentment or strength through Christ as well. We can have that same contentment or strength through Christ as well. And so when we think about being content, especially in the context, when context is crucial, the context of this passage, Paul is suggesting that, hey, I can do everything through Christ. And by everything, I mean I can be content. I have learned to be content because I have put all my eggs in the Jesus basket, if you will. Christ is my strength. And so because of that contentment, I think that breeds gratefulness in his life. He is thankful for these people. He knows, and again, this might be my opinion, but he knows that he doesn't need their financial support, whatever. He doesn't necessarily need that because he's dependent upon Christ. But he also knows that these people blessing him is a good thing, and he's built a good relationship with them. And probably somewhere he realizes this is how God is going to meet his need, is through these people. And so it's so important that he's showing gratefulness to them because of the contentment he's experienced, and the contentment comes because he knows that Christ will meet his needs. One more thing. Remember that Paul heard God say that my grace, meaning God's grace is sufficient. So he's learned this lesson, and now that breeds contentment in him, and that then therefore breeds gratefulness. So I encourage all of us to learn that God's grace is sufficient for us, and that can breed contentment, that we can say we have no need for support because God has it all under control. And then from that, we can breed gratefulness in our lives in all situations, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between. So ask yourself today, are we confident in God's grace? Has it bred contentment in our lives to know that He will be our strength and support? And from that, what are we grateful for when it comes to our lives and Christ working within it? Hey, if you enjoyed this today and you'd like to hear the entire sermon called Grateful in the Grind, well, just visit southportheights.church/media. There you'll find this sermon along with all of our other sermons as well. Just visit southportheights.church/media. And if you like going beyond the sermon every week, well, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page as well. There you'll find Beyond the Sermon, Deeper Worship, Monday Prayer Moments, and all of that other good stuff. So make sure to subscribe, follow, like, so you don't miss any of our other great online content. Thanks so much for watching. My name is Derek, and I look forward to the next time we can join together and go beyond the sermon.